Okay, I got you.
Working on it. There we go. Hi.
Nice. Very cool. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
You look great. I love that top.
Thank you. I'm just
Um,
home working, so try to pull it together.
nice. Me too. I got called on a phone call and I heard your little weird beep. Like your Zoom is starting now. I was like,
Oh,
wait, no, I gotta get off the phone.
yes, I do.
So first of all, thank you so much. I know everybody's super busy. So
My
thank you
pleasure.
so much for taking a minute.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. Where are you from originally?
Okay, it's a good answer. I'm from Idaho.
Wait, how are you singing in Idaho?
I
They
know,
don't
I know.
sing.
I was like, I'll give you a minute. Yes, I'm from Idaho. I was born and raised in Boise.
Oh man, are there any other musicians on the scene?
You know what? So Gene Harris spent a lot of his life there. And there was a
Okay.
Gene Harris festival that still, I think it still continues, but it was like kind of peaked um, towards the end of his life. And after he passed, it was going for a while. But he lived there. He had a session downtown Boise that I barely missed. I was like in junior high, so I wasn't able to go to the bars yet, which is really unfortunate. And then the only other singer really that's like out there, I mean, not the only other, but the one that's like really working is Curtis Stigers. I don't know if you know of him. He had
Oh
like a
yeah,
hit.
right.
Yeah, he had like a pop hit career in the 90s, and then and he sings, he travels in Europe a lot and he plays a lot. So he's been really supportive of me too. And I've sort of looked to him for advice on how to do
Oh,
it.
that's awesome. Man, you could have won $1 million. Not that I have it. From me, if you'd have said you got three guesses, I never would have guessed. Man,
Yeah.
that's
It is a
awesome.
little
So,
strange. It's so funny when people introduce like at shows, they're like, and she's from Idaho, and it's like you can feel this audience thing of being like, wait, what? What's happening right now?
so like,
So
were you always singing? Were you like one of those kids that's walking around, la 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 la
yeah,
la, or
absolutely, absolutely a musical baby. And like just my whole life loved music. Didn't think I'd be a singer until like last couple years of high school was I like actually interested in it professionally, but was just like music was my everything. Everything, dancing, singing along to recordings.
did you do
And always
musical theater or anything
I
like
wasn't a
that?
musical theater person. I was a choir kid. I was like
Okay.
always in choirs. Yeah. Um, and I loved it. And I think I sort of built a voice, as many of us do, out of like studying, not even studying, but just joyfully imitating the greats, from like, and like, I'm an 80s baby. So my grandmother really introduced me to like the classics, of jazz, of blues, of singer-songwriter, like everything. But then I also have all the influences of my childhood from like Whitney, Janet, and all of that stuff. So they're
Right. I
kind
was
of
gonna ask, is mom or dad sing or somebody else musical?
My dad couldn't sing he could not sing. My dad could not
Sorry,
sing.
sorry, dad.
And my mom has a beautiful singing voice, and we learned when I was in college, she was adopted, and we got the adoption papers when I was like in my 20s or something. And both of her parents were very musical. Her biological parents were very musical. But and her
We're
adoptive
one
grandmother
for
was,
genes.
yeah, right. And like, loved language and stuff. So it was really interesting because I love language. But my grandmother who adopted her, who was like she was my person. She just loved music and also just creativity in general. So we would have like full on listening sessions, like drink tea and listen to entire albums of Ella or Frank or BB King or all those, just wonderful artists.
That's incredible. So, are we talking about actual like vinyl? Like,
That's right. Yep.
that's it. I always
Like
say
when
if
I
you
was a
can't,
kid, just like sitting in front of the speakers and hanging out at her house, which is some of my best memories in life.
yeah, this is my little cubby hole, and if you turn right here, you see, I guess
Woo!
my.
Yeah. It's so funny. My roommate's a DJ, so she has a pretty good vinyl collection and 45s here. But my vinyl collection's in Idaho because I didn't know when I moved here, it was like, and then there's a guy down here in Harlem that has like he always sets up shop and he has all these records and I'm like, "Oh, do I start collecting again?" And I've bought a couple, but just the other day I bought a Shirley Scott album because I've been really into organ jazz lately and it's like one that I haven't seen online. So I'm like, uh-oh, I think I might be starting to collect again.
Because it's listen, I don't streaming is never going to replace the vinyl. They're never going to put, especially jazz and stuff like that. They're
Yep.
never going to put that on vinyl. Speaking of
Yeah.
jazz, um, you have such a strong voice, such a big voice.
Ah,
I could see one of these pop bands trying to take you and steal you and do things with you.
honey, where are they? Let's go. Just
Oh,
joking.
listen, no, no. But I was wondering how you wind up coming from where you come from and having all the influences, how you settle. What was the thing that grabbed you that says, I'm going to settle and sing jazz and do this? And
Yep.
because
I
it's a
mean, I
lot of
think
work,
it is a
right?
lot. We know it's so much work. I'm like finishing my taxes right now, just being like, whoa, that, it's a lot of work to be a band leader and then have all these different projects going, but it's also like the most joyful thing in life. I
Because you
feel
could
like I'm
sing some whoa, whoa, whoas in the background.
some woos and some oohs, right?
Yeah, and just cool it, But to
Yeah,
take this on,
I mean, I think it's just what you feel compelled to do. Like for me, what we call jazz or sort of improvisational Black American music, like I just am so drawn to the spirit of it and like as a live experience, both the connection with the audience and then what happens with us on stage. Like I just could never get away from that. I think there's something so special and spontaneous and spiritual about what happens in this like communing with each other that does happen in other music too, absolutely, but like there it's expected and it's sort of at the in the DNA of
right?
improvisational music. And I think that's what has always excited me. I mean, my mentor, I always bring her up. I moved to British Columbia to study privately with this woman, Louise Rose, she was kind of an Oscar Peterson protege. She's from Pennsylvania originally, but an
Oh,
incredible artist, very much connected to the lineage. And our lessons were like going over the same tune 5 or 6 times, maybe 7 or 8 times, and just talking about different ways to interpret a lyric or different ways to like start the groove or different tempos and how that affects like there's just so much freedom in the music that I feel extremely excited by. Like it never gets old. And then
yeah.
I think I really am inspired by the way that we can connect with each other as musicians, right, on stage, and then with the audience, like so intimately and so intensely and directly that it's like something I thrive on. I love that experience, and I think that's special to jazz.
Yeah, because I'm always amazed that like people will spend all this money to travel and see Beyonce, and every single thing she's gonna do.
Right, right, right,
Like every ooh ah, or to see a rap concert where it's just two guys walking back and forth on stage. You know
right.
every word. Like, I mean, if you dig it, you dig it. But I just going to a jazz show and not knowing what they're gonna do, what song is coming next, what
Yep.
who's gonna start it, and then when you have relationships like you and Misha, we were talking about that.
Hmm.
He's got so much energy. He's so awesome. He might say, "Hey, let's take it up a half step," and you're like, "Oh,
Absolutely.
oh, okay."
Yep.
And that's a moment that's you had to be there. You had to buy a ticket. You had to be in the room, and then it's gone. Poof.
Yeah,
You know.
agree. And in many ways, I think I try my best to like participate in social media, but I also don't think that necessarily transfers over to like a 15-second clip. Sometimes like you're like, that was fire, and then you see it online, you're like, well, like
Yeah.
because
No,
you
you
had to
had to
be
be
there
in the
for the
room.
you had to be there for the conversation that was happening just before and was happening just after and the whole connection with the audience. So it's like, yeah, but I was talking to a friend the other day. I sat in with a great singer, Nicole Zaritis, and like we didn't know what was going to happen. And I love that moment of surrender that we all feel like when you get on stage. I feel like it's literally just giving yourself over to the moment and letting whatever happens.
So what always scared me about being a singer? Not that I had a chance. Um, when you're talking about whatever happened, I always wonder how do you deal with adversity, right? Like you took maybe a red eye. You were the mic wasn't so good, so maybe you were singing too hard. Maybe your voice is a little bit
Yes.
scratchy. But you flew to Germany now, and
Yep.
this gig's been on the books for 6 months.
Yep.
What do you do? Do you have any tricks or whatever? Or
Well, you just opened a whole thing up here, but let me see. Okay. So, first of all, I think that the voice is something that you grow with as you age. right? So when I was in my 20s, could I go out and do all the crazy things and then be fine in the morning? Yes. Now that I'm not in my 20s, can I do that? No, I cannot. Like it's,
Sipping
and for
tea
me,
and wrapping your throat up with the scarf.
listen, I'm like, I can't hang out with y'all. I have a gig tomorrow. Like I can't, so I think it really is like a process of knowing your instrument and accepting as it changes, but also conditioning, right? Like you have to be extremely disciplined. And I feel like I learned that like early to mid 30s, I was just like, oh, I can't play around anymore. Like I can't do that because I will not be able to sing properly if I don't, take care of it, if I'm around smoke, if I'm whatever, like I just can't do that.
Right, all that stuff.
So
Yeah.
and I remember like I heard some quote from Katie Lang that was like, you cannot possibly be a singer that takes their instrument or that takes their career seriously if you da 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 da, right? Like smoke, all these other things. And I was like, at the time I was kind of like, "Ah, there's lots of people that do that. But then you learn like it really becomes an incredible like act of discipline to be a vocalist, which is like a bummer. I always tell my vocal coach, like, I do not want to be a neurotic singer. And so there's a balance, right? There's a balance of letting go and also not getting too emotionally attached when your voice is like fluctuating and maybe it's swollen that day just because of allergies or just because you didn't sleep enough
Yeah.
or because you had the red eye. Like you have to surrender also to where your voice is at. So like my vocal coach was like, when you're exhausted, oops,
It's okay. I'll cut that out.
sorry, that was yeah, right. Sorry, that's fine. Um, do not call me right now.
Right.
When you're exhausted, my vocal mentor was just like, you have to give into that exhaustion. You have to learn to sing into that exhaustion, and maybe and many times those performances can be like even more emotionally transparent and vulnerable because you're more limited in your tricks, right? So
You're
you
right.
learn to you learn to work with your voice, like you learn your voice, you start to accept where it's at, and then you work within whatever it's doing that day. But it's become really intense, and it's like I've been taking lessons consistently for the last like 5 or 6 years. I also had a vocal injury due to COVID, which was crazy because I couldn't
Oh,
sing for
wow.
6 months, and I had to relearn.
Really?
Yes, yeah, I had to like fully learn. I didn't have to relearn how to sing because my instrument actually, when you sing, you have better technique than when you speak. So my singing always stayed pretty much intact. But like an athlete, it made me realize how much singing is athletic and how
Right.
I have got to consistently train. And then as I was building back up my trust with my voice after not singing for a while, like it was a huge learning experience for me. And
Oh,
I take very
wow.
good care of my voice. Yeah, it was you know how COVID causes a lot of swelling. A lot of vocalists have had issues through like long COVID and things like that. So I had swollen cords, a cough for 14 days that caused a vocal hemorrhage that I didn't know about. And then I sang and I got a polyp from that because I sing very athletically, you're using your
Right.
cords. So I had to have surgery, vocal surgery in July of 2022. Like it was a whole thing.
Oh my God. I'm so glad I asked that question. I didn't even know that
Yeah.
was a thing. But just as you were talking, there's like been a couple of questions that popped into my mind. And that's always been one of my fear. And I've worked with singers where they just like,
Yes.
we get off the plane and they're like, I don't have a voice.
Oof.
I'm
It's
like,
the worst
wait,
feeling.
the show's in 90 minutes. Like,
Yes.
you see people get through it. Or Shirley Horn, I love the way her voice is so serene and beautiful when she's younger and gets a little more gravelly as she
Yeah.
gets older. And I love the old records just like the young records. And I worked with Abby Lincoln,
Right.
who's it's the list goes on and how people deal with it. And oh, I can't drink, but okay, you
I
know what
know.
I mean?
Tell me
So
about it. Because especially like it's so frustrating because you want to unwind, you want to talk to people like and that's the thing. Singing actually, you're like I said, you're in better technique than in the break when you're like, what'd you say? Like that is
over
what
the house music or whatever. Yeah, yeah,
yes, like that's what kind of messes us up a lot of times. So you learn and you do the best you can, you know.
wow. So
Yeah.
what's the dream? What's the next 5 years? What's the projection? Have you done your own record yet? Are you on 3 records, 5 records? Where are we at?
So I released my second album after a very long time. I released my debut album when I first moved to New York, which is a really long time ago. and then released a second album in March of last year. And I write music. I collaborate with Misha on original music, and then we also work on arrangements. He does a lot of arrangements for me.
You play
So
piano or guitar
I
or
play
something like
I
that?
play enough piano to, to compose and to read music and to play a little bit for myself. And I got pretty far with guitar through the pandemic. I love the guitar. I'm pointing over here because it's right there, but
Listen, I
I don't
love the
play in
guitar
public
too.
yet.
Mine is over there. I don't even
Okay.
say I play it. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful instrument to like go to a park or in the
Yes.
back of a van or wherever, stuck at the
Yeah.
airport. I love it for that. Yeah.
It was really good company, and I also love the sound. I want to play more with guitars too, but I love the sound of guitar too. So, but yeah, I feel compelled to write original music, so I've just started kind of opening that whole thing up again and working on some new tunes, and I want to record sooner than later. It's such a challenge for us too, like the industry, this expectation of constantly putting things out, but then also in some ways feeling like it's hard to reach people in the same way as when with albums. Like I'm of that generation that really has one leg in, but one is like straddling that like digital era versus kind of the old school era. And I miss, like I had a whole concept for my album, and I found it challenging to sort of communicate that in our with the
Right.
means that we have and like reach people in the same way. But
I
we
see
make
that
albums
so
for ourselves.
differently, though. I
Yeah,
see that.
talk to
I
me.
mean, we should talk about it at some point.
Yes.
I won't go into it all here, but I think it's never been easier to document. And I don't understand because, like, whenever you ask someone, why do you want to record? Well, I want to document my progress. So document it. You can
Yeah.
take your cell phone, you can take and if we use different mediums, it's not under the umbrella or the strain of mix and master and artwork and
Yeah.
then you're only at the limitation of your creativity because you don't have to worry about spending all the money. And then
Yeah.
you can turn it over. You can do a record a week if
I
you want.
think,
If
you know what? I agree with you in that sense. I agree that it's easy to document and it's easy to create or to create content for people to check out, but I still feel like it's a challenge, or it felt challenging to reach people on an investment emotional level. And I wish that didn't feel true, but
oh,
I felt
interesting.
like and the only reason I say that, like, of course your fans, the people that are with you are always like into it and watch until the end, and like, but in general, it's like 15-second, like attention spans are kind of short. It's just, and it's in your, and we're saturated, like myself
Yeah.
included, so you may see something online, like, are we really watching people's performances on Instagram? Like, I don't know. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. Like, that sounds negative because I'm with you. I'm an optimist,
But
and I do.
there used to be 3 minute songs that that were kind of. It's not so different, right? You think we used to have the long play, but before that, it was like 2 minute, 90-second songs and things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's an opportunity in that. But I also, you got me thinking, isn't it easier for, I would think it's easier for a singer to reach people because you could hit right with the words. You could tell them
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
um,
I do agree with that.
I
Yeah.
read a quote about a writer that said, I could tell you a story in one sentence. And I wish I knew what the sentence was, but it was like, man goes outside, gets rained on, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, that was the story. You have the ability to do that on the
Yep.
drums or with a band. I'm halfway through the head and next clip,
Right. Yeah, there's an immediacy, like there's such a humanness to the voice itself. I agree. I do agree with that.
It's incredible. It's God's instrument for real, man. Uh, so when you're writing, are you writing lyrics, and what's that process like? That always has scared me and made me feel like vulnerable. I
Hmm.
don't want to give away too much. I don't want to talk too much. Shut up, But
Right.
when you write it,
Yeah.
this your story, or
Yes. I've had many moments like that in songs where I'm like, um, I feel like
I'm not singing
writing,
that anymore.
yeah, or not while this person's in the room. We're not doing that. I writing for me has always been the easy part. I'm very connected to like my creative world and my imagination. So I've been a journaler since I could write. Literally, I have journals from since I could write. So the lyrics and the poetry of it are the easier part for me. Like the
Oh,
composition, I didn't really study composition formally, and like so that is something that I have to sometimes it comes through and it just comes through, right? Like you're just like, hallelujah, thank you very much. And then
right.
other times it's something that I have to work a little bit more at and collaborate with people on. So, but the lyrics to me, I could write lyrics all day, all night. I love it. As soon as I get it, sometimes I dream a lot and I always kind of like write my dreams down. A lot of times those will turn into a song, or an idea for a song, and then I'll compose from there.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I want to dream.
You don't dream?
Man, I pass out usually,
Oh yeah,
and I wake up with somebody on my face, like, "Daddy, I want to
come
watch
on, let's go.
cartoons." Yeah, like so. If I had a dream, I don't remember it, and I definitely don't have a moment to write it down.
Yeah, I
But
know the
wow,
pros and
okay.
cons, right? Like family, I definitely like I'm single, I don't have kids, and there's pros and cons to it, definitely. But one of those things is that I'm still have a lot of time to devote to just being in a space of like revelry and
Oh,
dreaming.
listen, take it, do it,
Okay.
have it,
You're like, shut
have it
up,
for
but also
me.
yeah.
No, I mean the kids are awesome. I wish I had taken more advantage of that. I'm sure you hear people say that,
Yeah.
sleeping in, it's never going to happen again. Especially because I got the kid of having the shop that
Mm,
deliveries and all that kind of stuff goes on,
yeah.
and then the family. But
Yeah.
so I got two questions that popped into my mind now. It sounds like you can write poetry, and is there a book or something inside of there somewhere?
It's no, I do it mostly just for the outlet, just for the flow, creative flow. I've never really like been interested in publishing or anything like that, but I just write words all over the place all the time. So then when I go to a session or when I'm ready to compose, there's usually like right now I've got like 6 songs kind of floating around in there that I need to pull from different, different
That's
my
awesome.
journal, my notes and all that stuff. But yeah, it's not especially organized as a process, my songwriting, but
But it
it
could
always
be.
comes together. And it always comes together and it's amazing because we keep this like encyclopedia of things where I'm like, yeah, I remember a lot of times like I'll go to a museum and write stuff from being at the museum, like and then it just kind of comes back through as needed. It's pretty cool.
Because you were making me think when you were talking, you said museum before, but even before that, I was thinking, you said you had all these books. And I was like, that's going to be cool when she does a museum. Like I went to Jason Moran, had that
Yeah,
exhibit, and he had
yes.
these scraps of paper, and it was almost like he knew that one day this was going to be a thing. And I think we
Yes.
all kind of do that a little bit, but he
Yep.
actually got to live that out. Someone can find your books, or some family member, in 100 years can find all these journals and,
Yes.
oh, this is one
Yeah.
sentence from the lyric from blah 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 song.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's interesting you bring that up as like part of our legacy because that's something I'm always thinking of. Like my dad passed away and the only thing I wanted from him was the photos he had taken and the things that he had written. Like
mhm.
material thing and he was very meticulous actually about documenting his travel experiences and things like that. And so I also feel like I operate in that same way. I've actually written to people while I'm journaling that I imagine would find it later.
Oh
Like
wow.
very occasionally, but sometimes I'll just like put a little note or something. Like there's something to, just to bring him into the room, like Casey Benjamin passing away. Like you think about the way that, the heartbreaking nature of that, but also what a legacy he left with his music. Like they put him on the speaker yesterday at the memorial, and it's like he's here forever. He's here
Yeah.
forever. So things
But see,
like
that's
writing,
another reason why you should be documenting. Because listen, writing, writing, I think the same as like being on a camera or singing it and having all this. Like I always think about, if someone discovers something I'm working on, I
hmm.
want there to be like hours of material. I don't want them
Yeah,
to discover me, and it's like, oh, there's only 10 minutes of this, or
right.
there's only an hour or whatever. I want them to, like, if there's only 15 minutes or 15 seconds or whatever, enough 15 seconds that they can spend some time and get a good picture.
Yeah.
Um, so did we make this second record?
The
or
second
we're
record's
about to make?
done. Second record's done. It's called Cannon and Sparrow, and it came out last March. So at
Okay.
Brush Culture, we'll be doing a lot of that stuff. It's
Oh,
both
nice.
a mix of arrangements and originals. And then the third one, I'm saying I wanna put a little pressure on myself to not wait like over a decade to release another project.
We won't
So
let you. But
yeah,
the cannon and the sparrow, what's that mean?
Cannon and Sparrow. It started. Oof. How do I wrap this up sort of succinctly? It
Take your
started.
time.
Okay, it started as a metaphor for it started as a little I'm a total geek and I was reading online like these little sayings, idioms and things, and I was looking for a song. I was writing a lyric to Misha's tune that he wrote called Superhero about like what does it mean to be a superhero now? Like, in this moment, how do we do that for ourselves? How do we do that for people around us? I was thinking about the political nature of things that were going on in 2016, and I had just also lost my father like within a week of that election, the presidential election. So that was kind of the impetus for the album. And there was a Russian saying that's like no need to shoot a cannon into sparrows, sort of as a metaphor for overkill. Like just, and I was thinking about devastation, but over time that became like, of course, the sparrow symbolizing hope, right? And sort of the songbird and all this stuff. It became a metaphor for resilience primarily and hope. And then also for the ways that I like to use my voice, which is like some of the like more kind of, what do you call that? Like, from the softest ballad, I have an 8-minute ballad on my album that's like one time through 8-minute ballad. And then I have things that are much more, using the range of my voice and sort of
Hmm.
speaking out, so to speak. So I liked the duality of like Cannon and Sparrow and how they both rely on air and wind. And I told you I went deep with the whole thing, but
Oh
um
no, you're super interesting. I'm sitting here like, how did I not know all this was going on with this
because you're
lady?
busy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Wow, the cannon and the sparrow. Man, I'm happy I asked these questions because I had a totally different idea that um, cannon and
Yeah.
sparrow.
And it became like there just became levels to it as I went on, like yeah, it just I really like I get an idea in my head and I just go all the way to the end with it, creatively. So like I said, it was a lyric about sort of collective devastation, but then it just opened itself up into all these different metaphors for the human voice, for the human spirit, for production even. Like I'm thinking about doing two vinyls with that album, one with the more produced songs, which would be canon, right? Like mechanical, electric, that kind of vibe. And then the Sparrow being all the acoustic tracks, which are just myself and a trio. So I liked sort of the duality of that too.
Oh wow, yeah, I like that. I would even thin it down. Some just solo, some
Mm-hmm.
solo with the guitar you were talking about, just
Yep.
to hear just you. Because sometimes when I hear these records, I'm like, yeah, but I can't hear the vocal. Like, I just clear that out, move this back. Let me just hear it.
Yes.
Especially when a song's got a lyric that means something to me. There's that duo record that Hank Jones and Abby Lincoln, where
Mm.
she does "Where There's Love" and all that stuff. Oh man, that's just so naked. It's like, I can't even listen to that record in the car or something. I have to pull over.
Right. I agree with you, and that's something that I'm challenging myself toward as well because I love being in the studio and I love creating, but I feel like I can do what you're saying, which is like, oh, let's add some horns here, let's add some harmonies here. And I like it as a project, but then I also really love, especially as I'm getting older, like really stripped down. So I think that's sort of a challenge for the next recording for me.
I've been
And
finding a
people
lot of
want to
my
hear the voice.
I was gonna say, a lot of my favorite artists have a time putting themselves in front.
Yeah,
Like just that, like, no,
absolutely.
this is it's my record. Just let me on your record. I can be mixed in and stuff, but let people hear my voice so that they can recognize. Oh, that's Emily. Oh,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm really excited for our audience to hear you. You played before, but I think it was like a last minute thing, and people didn't know you would come. I'm happy that we're like doing this, and we're going to be able to pub it right, and
Me too.
with your cats and everything. No, it's going to be so
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
all right, what do you think I should know about you that I didn't ask? Because I
Well, you
feel like
asked
you're
some
like an
good
onion.
questions.
You're like, I ask a question that I think I'm like, I can see where she's going, and you go, no, the cannon got into the sparrow. Oh shit.
Um,
Um,
no, you've asked amazing questions. I feel like I liked what you said right before we got on here about how we don't usually get to talk to each other. And that's part of what I meant even about the social media thing is like we get blips of each other and we're like, I like that person. That person's doing something cool. But these kind of like one-on-one or even just like delving into the details, I do feel like that's what I meant earlier about sometimes we get oversaturated and we don't dive in, in the same way that we don't pick
but
up the phone.
we can't give that group of people too much trouble or too much power, rather, because there
Hmm.
is another group that feels how we feel.
Yeah.
And I read an article one time that was talking about finding your like tribe or your group and going deep with those people because there are people who want to watch a long movie. There are people
Yeah.
who will read a thick book.
Yeah.
There are people that will want to have tea with their friend to catch up and turn their phones off. Yeah, and I think
This sounds amazing.
I don't want to give too much power to those people that are like paging through TikTok like this all day.
Right. Like
Um,
I think we have to learn like I'm not necessarily, always like it's not natural for me to like pick up my phone and be like, "Hey everybody, da 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 da," right? But I think it's good to find balance and I feel, like good to find balance as far as how I participate in that and then also making sure to like nurture my relationships and the people in my world and the musicians in my world offline. Like that's super key.
but in this scheduling, like
Hmm.
I've never been so busy. I think everybody, all my friends were all so busy, with families or with jobs or with travel or
Yeah.
it's a wild time. And then even when you schedule a time, someone can call you and just interrupt the whole thing, and then
Well,
it's a
especially with
wild
having
thing.
a club, like what made you open a club? That's wild and incredible.
Honestly, the real quick answer was um, I had a daughter.
Hmm.
And when COVID happened, I've always been on the executive side. I'm one of those people that like I wouldn't have had a career if I didn't pick up the phone and make things happen. Like if I told you all the stories from getting Kenny Washington a cymbal deal to
Hmm.
negotiating things for Mulgrew to I recorded the Greg Osby record. That's kind of one of my most famous records, band in New York. I recorded it on my mini disc and I called Greg and told him it was good. So I've always been in
Yeah.
like that. But in COVID, my daughter was about 3 or 4 months. I was getting ready to go on a 6 week tour with my band. I was doing my thing. And after the devastation subsided, I was a stay at home dad. Now I'm taking walks and I
Hmm.
completely fell in love with my daughter and that thing. And then as COVID was ending, I was like, okay, I'm never leaving her side. But now what
Hmm.
do I do?
Right.
So I started throwing underground shows of like speakeasy kind of things. I learned how to work cameras and I did a YouTube show where I would go into a place where nobody was there and I would do my whole show. I put up some clips of it recently where I interviewed Luis Perdomo and some other people.
Nice.
Uh, and then it snowballed into, well, what if I got a liquor license and did it myself? Because once I was doing it at clubs, a club that would generally be empty on a Monday night or Sunday night or whatever. Now there's 100 people in here, and they came here because of something I booked, but I'm
Yeah.
not getting the benefit from it.
Right.
So this became my work way of doing that, and it, like everything else, it was much more work than I wanted. But like when I get off here, I'm going to pick up my daughter from school, and we're going to get ice cream, and I can drop her off in the morning. I can go upstairs. My son's upstairs. We can go for a walk and stuff. And
Yeah.
then just as they're winding down, I can go to work
Yeah.
and be back and do it again. So that was super, super important to me. That coupled with the idea that we don't have a lot of agency in the music that we all love and create.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that we think are wrong or what have you, and we can't do that. Like if I like Emily and I like what she's saying about her next record,
Hmm.
being on this side of the ball, having a club, I can give her a platform to play and sing and work out her material.
Yeah.
I can record the material in my club. I can,
Yeah.
there's a series of things that I can affect that I can't just as a drummer. My
Yep.
name doesn't have the same. You're just a good drummer. You can't trade with me, but like I've had artists at the club that they were like, "Oh, I'm trying to get to play this club. I'm trying to get to play that club." And now because I have a club, because I have a card to trade, so to speak, I can say,
Right.
"Hey, can you get so and so a night? Oh, this date? Okay. Hey, you got this night at the club." I
Right.
think that was a real important move for me because I went through a couple of things. I was like, I don't like that. And
Yeah.
it's not a meritocracy where if you just sing better, Emily, they will listen to what you say. No, that's not how
Right.
that works.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
was
I
kind of
appreciate it's a
those.
beautiful venue. I'm happy to like be singing there. I think it's a gorgeous venue and it's nice and it's a place that needed some music. So
Oh, thank you so.
props
I
to
mean,
you.
that town, Teaneck and stuff like the people bringing the music to the people. I'm sort of like a politician there. I got the ears of
Yeah.
Congress and like it it's like the musical version of being a homeowner versus
Mm-hmm.
a renter or something. Like
Hmm.
your say means a little something more, even though it shouldn't, right? But we can argue about that till we're blue in the face. It's just
But especially we need, I think it's wonderful to have musicians in those positions. Like those
yeah,
positions are necessary and to have somebody who really and truly all the way fully gets it is really
yeah.
important. So,
And so the
yeah.
dream is like I'm sick of people dying or being not taken care of. So it would be nice to be able
Yes.
to give awards to people and just give them money instead of like there was a friend of mine not too long ago who had an operation he needed, and he was doing a GoFundMe.
Yep.
And I just didn't want to see that. I would like to be able to have a situation
Yeah.
without being a 501c3, which is another issue we have, where you can just cut them a check.
Yep.
I don't have to have a board. We don't have to have a meeting. Hey,
Hmm.
come by the club, or hey, give me your address.
Yes. Yeah.
So that doesn't
Yeah.
happen without this very, very difficult process.
Yep.
But but this was awesome. I can't believe you're such a deep person. I wish you all the luck in the world.
Oh,
I had no idea. You talk to artists that like, why'd you call your album that title? Oh, because it was cool. It's like, okay, I gotta cut that out. I'm like, um,
no, I
but
think.
vocalists, you got to be like that. You got to have something deep in order to make it.
Yeah, and I think it's equally for my interior, for my interior world, my emotional world, as and also for other people. Like I love that, and like you mentioned, as a vocalist, we really get to help. We especially get to help as musicians. We get to facilitate emotional experiences for people, and I feel like in these times, as in every time for different reasons, but like that is such a special role to play, and I love being able to do that, and sort of processing things together as we do through music has been super key. So
It's incredible. What's happening in the next 5 years? What's the goal? What's the plan?
yeah, so I mean, for me, travel is really key. I'm playing in, just setting up new places. I always like to experience the new places. So I'm playing in California for the first time in May, and I like the connection of travel and music. That's sort of my ideal scenario is to play more festivals, to be playing more international jazz clubs. I just kind of started to play in Europe right before the pandemic, so I'm trying to do more of that, as that's sort of a natural step for a lot of us. And but not just in Europe. Like I want to be everywhere. I want to play all around the world. So that's my focus. And
Nice.
recording a lot more. And if I sing some oohs and ahs, let me get some more some diversify my streams of income. I'm ready.
Nice.
But
Okay.